Hello, everybody. It's Friday. It's midday, which means it's time for coffee,
Yeah, hang on. Coffee.
or not, or orange juice, or tea, or whatever
Yes.
takes your fancy. And actually, we'll talk about that with our special
Mm.
guest today in a moment or two, because actually, what you imbibe may have a particular effect on today's topic.
That slightly concerns me, Graham, as well. I may hear things I don't want to hear, as in reduced coffee intake. So I may have to sort of just cover my ears, cover my eyes when our guest starts to go down that route.
Absolutely. So we're going to be speaking to Nicole in a minute, and today's topic is sleep. Something that some of you may not get enough of. Something that certainly any of you who have had children, or in my case, 5 children, will definitely know that you've not ever had enough of. I think for a good 20 years, I was sleep deprived because of various little ones waking me up in the middle of the night. So for anybody that's currently going through, having a new baby at home and being woken up in the middle of the night, or you've got a lot of work on at the moment, it's making you very anxious, and that's keeping you awake, or you're just excited because it's your birthday tomorrow. Today's show is all for you. How's your sleep? Before we get going, how well do you sleep?
Not great. I have to say, I fall asleep early. Sometimes struggle in the week to get past 10 o'clock. So relatively early. The problem I then find is I'm usually bolt awake by about 5:15. So any of my customers out there, that's why you get emails from me at 6 in the morning, because I tend to be awake, and it's like, well, I might as well crack on with the day. So I think my sleep's okay, but I could just do it, moving it an hour. Do you know what I mean? Just shifting it along a little bit. And that may be something I can find out today, how I can do it.
Now, interesting. So if you email people at 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning or whatever it is, do you caveat that by saying at the bottom, feel free not to respond to this straight away? Or do you, because it's email, think, well, it doesn't really matter because it just because for some people that are neurodiverse, that causes them a lot of anxiety.
It does. There is something I've found that you can delay the sending of the email. So what I generally do is I write the email, and then I think when it gets to 8 o'clock in the morning, it pushes them all through. So I'm into the working day and I'm up and running, and they all sit there, and then 8 o'clock, it's like whoosh. There's a whole load of emails just
so actually, yeah, everybody thinks that Stephen's actually up at 8 o'clock and he's, really on it at 8 o'clock. He's actually been at it for hours. There you go.
Pretty much.
Let's bring our special guest in, Nicole.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hello,
Nicole.
Nicole.
Thanks for being here. And it's a pleasure. Where are you coming from?
Manchester.
And which part of Manchester are you actually
South
in the
Manchester.
centre?
So I'm kind of on the border of Sharston and Gatley, so I'm Manchester Stockport way.
I love that. I love the hand movement.
Yeah.
I'm on the border.
Jazz hands, I've got all sorts of hands going. It's great fun.
Yeah. So
I was in Manchester yesterday.
Was you?
There you go. And I went, and I was just talking to Graham about this off air, and I couldn't work out how would I crowbar this into the conversation, but I went to the Cube at the Arndale Centre yesterday, that new interactive game that's based on the TV show.
I never get into Manchester anymore. I've got 2 kids.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they love it. It was brilliant, really good. Sort of get locked in this sort of perspex box, and you have to undertake sort of lots of strategic activities. I don't think the show's on the TV anymore, but it's really, really good.
Well, I wonder why.
Put my 4-year-old in now, lock it and walk away.
You could do that. That'd be brilliant, wouldn't it? And I'll be back in 3 hours.
That would be amazing. That would really free me up for a few hours.
Get out of this perspex box. You've got 3 hours to do so. If you're not, Mum will be back in 3 hours. Yeah, perfect.
It's some kind of game. It's some kind of game show stroke nursery.
Yeah, that's it.
That would be amazing.
Oh my word!
Stay and play in the Arndale.
Yeah.
Do you think companies could kind of use it as as sort of an intelligence test for potentially when they were recruiting new people? You know,
Oh, yeah.
I know. I think they do. So I think some do things like that, don't they? With like think tanks and stuff.
a lot of people in a room.
Or maybe
would
not a
say,
lot of
if you can get out of this room, then you can come and work for us.
If not, no, you
If not,
can't.
you'll be there forever.
You'll be there. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Oh, I've come to pick Jim up. Do you know where Jim is? He's in the room. Sorry, you can't have him back.
Yeah.
Didn't make it.
No.
There you go. So,
I've
Nicole,
got some bad news for Steve, by the way.
Yeah, go on.
I do. So you know how you're kind of wanting to move your like body clock to go to sleep a bit later and wake up a bit later. The clock change is happening in a couple of weeks. So 10 o'clock becomes 9 o'clock at night.
So, well, hang on a second. There's a double challenge for you there, Nicole. Now you haven't got to sort it 1 hour. You've got to sort 2 hours out for me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, God,
My
I forgot about
word.
that.
Yeah. So the best thing I'd say with things like this is actually, if you can, stay out a bit later in the daytime doing things, physical activities and stuff like that. So when you come to your chill time, you go that bit later and just gradually shift your bedtime back, even if it's just by 15 minutes every few nights. And so you get up that 15 minutes that later each day. But just gradually do it. Don't just suddenly do it, because what will happen is if you just go to bed later one night by an hour or something like that, you'll still wake up at the same time, if not earlier.
I guess it's a bit like running, isn't it? You don't suddenly go from a 5K and go, I'll do a marathon and that will resolve the problem. It won't. It's that incremental increase from 5 to 26 or whatever that achieves it, isn't it? So it's the same with sleeping.
Yeah, it sounds like your chronotype is an early bird. So you go to bed early, wake up early. So you're stuck there. So you've actually got to shift your body clock. Now that actually means shifting everything. So maybe your meal times, the lot, do you know what I mean? When you eat, and just when you do everything, but just move everything back by 15 minutes a day over the course of a week. We do a lot with children, do a lot with children when they're coming up to that clock change. You just do a shift over the week by sort of 15 minutes a night.
Wow. Thank you.
Listen to this. We're starting already. Now listen, let's wind back a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
See what I did. No, it's fine. You see what I did there, because I can control time.
Yeah. Well, the clock change is coming up.
Well, yeah, and it's all my fault, right? You see, I did, and interestingly enough, last year for the very first time, I noticed that there were more and more people campaigning to not have that time change. That they want to eradicate that time change and see it as completely...
Before we jump into the conversation, what you just touched on it there, what is it all about? Because you hear lots of stories as to why it is. I always associated it with something to do with farming, wasn't it? As to why the clock change was to give the farmers sort of lighter mornings. But what's the reason?
I think there's an element where there's a safety aspect as well, isn't it? So it's like it's not going dark as... Which way around is it? So 4 o'clock becomes 3 o'clock. So it's darker a bit earlier, isn't it? But it's that lighter mornings.
Yes.
When it comes to sort of winter.
There's no actual need for it.
There's not.
Other than probably the cost element, which if we actually knew what the cost element was, the cost element of changing would probably be horrendous, because you'll probably find that there's a whole load of systems.
It's not even just the systems, it's the health side of things as well. There tends to be more heart attacks and things like that on the day of the clock change, because it's messing with your body clock and things. It's it's incredible. Okay. Absolutely incredible.
There you go. Wouldn't you know? I have to interject very, very quickly and say, once when I was doing a radio show, and I used to do comedy things on this radio show. It was like we did pretend real people coming in, so it was like a magazine show, but we made up all of the people. And on one April Fool's, we did the whole piece about someone from the European community coming in and talking to the fact that as of today, the UK are going to change over to be in line with the rest of Europe and have a 25-hour clock. And later that day, this is a true story.
I hope someone didn't have a heart attack because of this.
No, later that day, I stood behind a woman in a department store in Sunderland asking for a 25-hour clock, and I just went, yes. So that's the truth. That is an absolute true story. So, Nicole. Oh, you can see that's tickled her fancy. Right. Tell us, how did you get into the world of sleep? Because that's an interesting area to get into.
Well, at first it started by having a baby that didn't sleep.
Right, I got with that.
Yeah, that was my driver. Well, I say that was my driver. That was the thing where I suddenly realized the severity, the impact of sleep deprivation, because I've never really had an issue with sleep before. I've loved my sleep. And then suddenly to go from having sleep to no sleep, and what bits you get were totally broken, and it not being a short-term thing, it being a long-term thing. And as I've learned over the years, more so the last couple of years, my own tendencies, which I've found out I'm likely ADHD as well, mixed with other chronic health conditions as well, have really made it really difficult for me to manage not getting sleep. And it's affected our relationship at home. It's affected every single part of our life. And then when I went back to work, I was in a field-based job, and I was falling asleep on the motorway in between my appointments. I was falling asleep in between my appointments. I was like just crashing out in the car. And I was in a sales job, so there was targets. So I had to talk to people, and I couldn't be bothered to talk to anybody. So I wasn't going to do any good at my job, was I? And I went from being one of the top performers in the business to one of the worst performers in the business. And rather than it being a case of, what can we do to actually support you? Because you've not suddenly gone from being really great at your job to absolutely rubbish. Obviously I had, but there's the fact that there was something underlying. Rather than saying, right, how can we actually support you? It was very much well, there's nothing we can do. It's your own issue. You've got to do the job. There's no flexibility. We can't change the job description in any way. We can't help you. And there was a contract to sign when I went back that stated I wouldn't drive tired. So you kind of go, well, I'm trapped and I can't really ask for help, and they can't give me any help. And I was getting managed out the business. Luckily, redundancy came up and I was able to use that money to study and start my business. And that was back in 2017. So that's kind of where it all started. And it's just been developing since then. And now I'm at the point of saying, right, we've got research papers out there proving how much it's costing businesses by not doing something about it. Is proving the size of the problem, and saying, actually, do you know what? We need to make this much more accessible, as in the support and important, and give it the respect. Because we all talk about, if we're hungry, we'll eat, and we need to eat healthy. If we're thirsty, we drink, and we talk about the need for drinking more water as well. We can't help but breathe. But when it comes to sleep, which is the other fourth thing that we need for actual survival, what do we actually do to improve it and to make sure we're getting enough of it? Nothing. We stick an extra episode on Netflix. Yeah. And it's like, well, hang on, we've got to do more. Yeah. So that's where I'm at, saying we raise that awareness and change it. So my mission is for 2025 to match the menopause in the success that they had in 2022.
That's brilliant.
It. Sleep will be 2025's main wellbeing topic.
And can I just say, I've really wanted to champion this for years, right? Because, and Stephen, I'm going to throw out the challenge now to our industry, or the sort of ergonomics, workplace assessment industry, because I have to say, I have never, ever, ever seen a form out there that's to do with someone's well-being, where someone goes in to do an assessment at the workplace and anybody asks a question about sleep, right? And yet, on a lot of the complex cases that I worked on over the years, I ended up having to talk about sleep because sleep played a part in it. And you just think, why are we missing this from this? Yeah.
It's your foundation. Imagine you've got a tree that's growing. What we're doing is we're nurturing all the branches, all the flowers, everything that's on there. We're kind of saying, the mental health, well-being, we're getting mental health first aiders in. We're doing all these wonderful things up here, but we're forgetting to actually water the flipping thing in the first place. Yeah. If we don't actually water that tree, then everything on the top can't flourish the way it needs to. It's your foundation. Yeah. And we're not nourishing, we're literally building castles on sand.
Well, when you go into a workplace and you're okay, so you're faced with someone that's maybe suffering with migraines, or they've got some kind of back condition. They got backache or some kind of musculoskeletal disorder. And, you know, not asking them at some point in that how they sleep actually seems to me to be very amiss, right? Because you can start looking at, well, you know, this is what I do during the day. This is how I work. This is, you know, this is what I lift. These are kind of the repetitive tasks that I do, etc., etc. But if you then find out, like, they get dreadful sleep at night, they're sleeping on a couch, or as I had in one case, they're sleeping in a cardboard box on the street.
Oh, wow.
Or therefore not sleeping, right? That's going to make a massive impact on them mentally, physically, you know, everything.
Absolutely. But they can't get better either, because while we sleep, that's where that's where our body's healing. So we've got these two different types of sleep, and it's really important that we actually make sure we're getting enough of both types. So your non-REM, which is that really deep restorative sleep, that's what we need for our physical health and physical restoration. So that's the immune system developing, that's injuries that are healing, good cell reproduction, all this type of stuff. Then you've got your REM sleep, which is your dream sleep. That's the stuff for the memory consolidation, problem solving, emotion regulation. That's your brain detox, your memory. They're really, really important. If we're not getting enough of these types of sleep, you know, so if we crash at the beginning, we get a few hours, and we're up the second half of the night, that's not really doing us any good for our brain and our mental health. Then we've got the other side. If we're kind of going to sleep too late, we're missing that really deep chunk, because we switch around the same time every single night, regardless when we go to bed. So we're getting less of that deep sleep. So our immune system's suffering and our physical health is suffering. So we've got to make sure that actually we are looking at this as a whole holistic approach, and saying it's not just about the amount of sleep, it's the quality of the sleep. It's both the quantity and the quality. And if you think about how many people there are driving, bus drivers, think about that. How many bus drivers are there that are out there with other people's lives in their hand? Now, some of the statistics that came out from the research we've just done showed that 1 in 8 people have admitted to falling asleep driving. That's only the people that admitted it. 37% of people have said that they have driven where they've been scared they would fall asleep. And we know that 20% of accidents that happen in the workplace are fatigue related. And it's huge. And you go, well, why are we not doing more to make sure these people are safe to do their job? Their brain is functioning well enough to be able to cope with their problem solving skills, you know, deal with things on a daily basis. Why aren't we doing more about it?
Nicole, you mentioned there, like the transport sector there. You mentioned about, you know, drivers of whatever it's a train or a car or whatever it would be. What from your experience, what sort of measures have they got in place? How do they measure this? How do they manage it? How do they make sure it doesn't happen? Have you come across any sort of specific examples of management of this?
No, I don't know. I won't lie. I don't know, because I've sent a few messages out to people at bus depots asking to talk about it, and I've not had any response.
Wow.
Right.
And this is the thing. I am sending hundreds of messages out every single week to businesses to talk to me. And it's one in a blue moon that come back and go, oh, this is actually something we need to talk about. I'm like, yeah, they all do. But actually, we're hardly getting any single response. I put a poll out on LinkedIn a while ago asking businesses if they had considered sleep support as part of their wellness package. 4% said yes.
Wow.
4%. 70-something%, I think it was, said they've never even thought about it, didn't think it was a thing. And 20-something% said there's no budget for it. But yet lack of sleep costs an average of £1,035 per employee per year. Yep. That's not the mental health. That's just from the lack of sleep. So that's the cost for things like presenteeism, productivity loss, that type of stuff, retention from people burning out. Because that,
do you know what? I'm going to reckon it's higher than that.
It is. Of course it is.
I reckon it's higher than that, because do you know what? I reckon if you actually start to monitor people's productivity during the day, and let's go especially around an area where actually you'd think, well, actually this is fine. It's safe for people to be here, which is sat in front of a computer. right? But you know, right, if you monitor someone throughout the day, what you'll get is you'll probably get a burst of productivity at some point, and then you'll get like the point where they're just going like,
yeah.
And
you know,
they might be doing that productivity, they might be productive, but what's the quality of it?
Yeah, or they're just finding ways. They're just, and actually, and the biggest danger now, here's the biggest danger. The biggest danger now is that we're now introducing things like AI technology and whatever in order to help with certain grunt tasks or whatever. But if people are tired, do you think they're actually watching what they're doing?
Do you think they're going to actually fact check it, or will they just kind of go?
Are they literally going to go, God, AI's done it for me. Brilliant. I can now sleep at my computer. And of course, they're not actually asleep, but they're like, you know, and what is there a name, by the way, for that kind of state where
what's that presenteeism? It's just been there. It's not actually,
yeah,
you know, it's the different, it's the opposite. You've got your absenteeism where they're just not there because they're not well, but then you've got your presenteeism where they shouldn't be there, but they are
there. Yeah.
Because they have to show up because they're not being looked after.
You know when like somebody's just what we call zoned out. Yeah. Is there a technical name for that? Is there like, you know, because I can, it's like sometimes when you walk into an office, you can see if you spent any kind of time in a long-term time in an office looking at people, you can see when people are like, the lights are on, but nobody's home. You know, they literally, and in fact, actually, if you watch like people's activity on a keyboard, sometimes you can see like it's basically there's not a lot going on there.
It's the one finger typing.
Yeah, or I'm just reading my emails at the moment, and you think they're just trying to regain energy. Yeah.
Just to give you an example, so I ran a case study with a company late last year, early this year. And what we did is we put my online courses into the workplace, and we had the staff spend half an hour a day in work time going through the courses. Because this is the thing, when you're tired, you haven't got time to do it when you get home and stuff like that. And this was about the children. So obviously they're getting home and the children are taking up the time and they're just not there. So what we did is the company allowed them half an hour a day for a week to go through it. It basically gave them an evidence-based education on children's sleep, baby and children's sleep. It gave them strategies that they could implement. It helped them understand the science behind things. They then went home and they implemented strategies to improve their child's sleep, to improve their own sleep. Now, we had one lady that took part, and she was saying to me that work that had got to the point of taking her 3 to 4 hours to complete, and she needed somebody else to check her work, was back to taking 1 hour.
Wow.
By improving her child's sleep to improve her sleep. How much money is that costing that business? Because that's crazy. 3 to 4 times the length, you know, the time, plus the other person coming in to having to check the work. So absolutely, it's definitely. And when we know it's 1 in 3 people that are actually struggling with sleep, that 1,035 then suddenly goes up to being 3,105. Do you know what I mean? Per person that's struggling per year. Well, if we're looking at the average salary, say 25 grand a year or something, and over £3,000 of that is lost through lack of sleep, you know, that's a huge chunk of a person's salary that's just gone from lack of sleep.
Yeah.
Massive. And what are the insurance costs to businesses from things like, you know, the work-related accidents and stuff?
Can I ask you? Sorry, Nicole.
The nuclear disaster in Chernobyl is thought to have been triggered by sleep-deprived operatives.
I was just going to ask you. Sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to ask you: is there a difference globally as well? Because obviously, I know if I go abroad to various parts of the world, that you know, in some cultures they will have a sleep in the middle of the day, right? Partly because of the weather, but partly that's part of their culture as well. We typically in the UK just seem to try and be on all the time. You know, I mean, are we kind of actually making more of a problem for ourselves over here because of the way our culture is, because of the way that our weather is, etc., and the fact that we kind of, we're kind of promoting this beyond all the time.
I can't remember the exact figures. There was some research somebody sent to me, and I think we were 6th out of the, like, globally. America was above us, as was Australia. But that's, when you're talking about globally, we're pretty right up the top there for not getting enough sleep.
So we're 6th down in terms of the worst.
The whole of the worst, the worst in the UK.
Wow.
No, not in the UK, in the world. Sorry, yeah.
World.
Well,
that's interesting. One of the things we talk about on this show, and we obviously focus around, picking it up from your name, is workplace. And we hear a lot about offices being redesigned and all that sort of thing. Are businesses putting provisions in place for people to have some sleep at work, Nicole? Is that a way that businesses are going?
You've got places like Google and Facebook. Okay. They tend to have nap rooms, nap pods and things like that. They do a lot in Japan.
Yeah.
Where they actually go off and they have a nap in the middle of the day. And sometimes just that 20 minutes can be enough to just reboot you and get you on.
Yeah.
But it doesn't even just have to be sleep. It can be physical exercise. Do you know what I mean? Actually getting out for 15 minutes and doing something, picking you up, rather than your lunch break being, I sit in the office or I go to Greg's and I get my food, I come back, I eat my food and I start work again. Actually getting out and doing something rather than spending lunch on your phone, and scrolling through Facebook, which is just basically more mind-numbing stuff. So actually, boosting and drinking enough water, that's a really important one. And so many people are surprised at the impact that drinking water can have on your, on your ability to function and to sleep well. Because water, it helps improve your metabolism. It improves your immune system. It's great for heart health. It's amazing.
I'm going to ask, is part of the problem that we are so set by routine? And since the dawn of time, maybe what we've done is we've created institutions, and those institutions then inform routine. And now we're kind of stuck in routine, right? I mean, for me, I mean, part of the way that I suppose part of the working day is determined, especially when you have children, by the school day.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like if you've got, your children are at school between these hours, etc., etc. So therefore, you've got to work within those hours, etc. And that may or may not actually suit somebody's body clock.
Yeah.
Do you know
what? One of the things I actually suggest, and this comes down to a lot with families, exactly for the reason that you've just said there, with regards to school pickups and things like that, and that flexibility element. What we're at the moment is we put the kids in nursery or school. They spend all day there and stuff. We pick them up. We don't spend any time with them. We rush to get them to bed, right? Because they're knackered.
Yeah.
And actually, we haven't connected with them. By the time we get them to bed, they're actually fighting back with us. And we have a really rubbish time getting them to bed. And then we're just knackered by the end of it. Whereas sometimes there's really simple things that a business could do that would benefit the business and the family and the employee. So, for example,
I'm all ears now.
Yeah.
Well, say, for example, the workday finished at, say, 5, right? Rather than them finish at 5, finish at 4. So you miss the traffic. So you get to where you're going much faster. You pick them up at a more sensible time. You get to spend time with your children. You get to reconnect with them before they get to that massively overtired state. You get them to bed at a time that is sensible for them, what they need. They're happier about it. You've spent time with them. You're enjoying spending time with them, right? So they go to bed happier because they're less anxious and you're less anxious. So you're not feeding off each other all the bad vibes. They go to bed at a sensible time. There's not been the same fight. You come downstairs and you do that hour. And it could be, I mean, who's that productive between 4 and 5 o'clock anyway? Most people are clock watching, if I remember from the days when the office, and it really was. But actually, that hour in the evening, that could be, actually, do you know what do I set up now? So first thing in the morning when I get in, I know I'm doing bang, 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 bang. or I've got my emails, I'll type my emails out now, but I'm not going to send them because I don't need to put them in somebody else's inbox tonight. I don't want to send that to their brain before they go to sleep, but I'll type them out, get them ready. So first thing in the morning when I can get in, I go ping, ping, ping and get them sent off. Simple things like that, but just move that 1 hour into the evening. And the family is so much better structured. It's just, and it wouldn't cost the business anything to do that.
Is the problem though? Here's the problem, probably.
Okay.
Is the problem that the people at the top of a business, who are the ones that would make the decisions about all of these things, right, are probably quite driven people, right? And if they weren't the CEO or COO or whatever of that business, they'd probably be self-employed. They'd probably be entrepreneurial. They're probably kind of, if you're looking at colors, red, right? So they're quite, they know their mind, they know their opinion. They're very, very driven kind of people, and those kind of people think, because they do, that they never switch off, and they think they need to be on 24 hours a day, 8 days a week, right? And therefore they're looking down at this, and like their people might benefit from being, finishing at 4 o'clock or whatever, but they're the kind of people that are going to be in before anybody else in the day. They're the kind of people that are going to be there later than anybody else at night, because it's all about the extra mile that I can go for the client.
And they're burning out. Yeah, they're going till they burn out.
And those are the people that message me at 8 o'clock in the evening, right, to go, I've just come up with this. Could you look at this now? Because they're still on.
They're still on
at 8 o'clock in the evening. Now, if they're until we change their culture and their mind on this, is it going to be difficult to get into organizations and actually create the change? Because they're the ones going to look down at it and go, well, lazy, isn't it?
Okay,
I mean,
so
it's basically lazy.
There's a few things I'm going to come back with on that one. So one, I did a talk last week for Kia. Well, not last week, week before, on World Mental Health Day. And it was on sleep and burnout. And all the things that were on the chart, this guy put his hand up and he went, do you know what? He said, I was every single one of those. And then I had my heart attack.
Oh,
right. Yeah. So yeah, they might be on and on and on till they're not. Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that they need to understand, because they're not going to take it seriously. They might also be in a position where they've got a luxury to be able to actually pay to get help at home. They might be in a position where they can go off and do sleep retreats or wellness retreats, where actually the people on the shop floor aren't in that position. And we know that 19% of people are saying that they're struggling to even make their ends meet. Well, hang on a minute. That's financial worry there, that cost implication, that those cost worries, that the implication that has on their mental health, which then affects their sleep, which then affects their productivity. So there is a disconnect between them, because these people up at the top probably can't have a clue what these people, a bit like the whole flipping Tories and the working class. There's a disconnect. They can't quite grasp the difference in it. There's also another point to this where actually, I hate to say this, but most of them are men. And I don't think women, especially women that have become parents and continue doing the load, would be, I'm trying to be diplomatic with things, that they would be more understanding. I think they might not necessarily see it as sleep, or they might have a very different mentality of, well, if I'm pushing on, everybody else can push on. But again, some of the research that we did showed that by the time somebody gets to that sort of level, that senior management level up there, women are still doing 52% of unpaid labor, versus men at that stage are doing 13%. And so yes, we're talking about these people at the top don't really have a clue. Probably not, because one, most of them are men. their finances are in a different place and their focus is somewhere else, and they've got people that they can pay to do the stuff that most people can only dream of people paying.
We've talked about this, Graham, in the past, haven't we? About, we've talked about putting sleep to one side, talking about ergonomics and all that sort of thing. We've always said it's the C-suite where you need to have the influence and need to get them into that thought process to make the changes that flow all the way down. So it again just ties in with what Nicole's saying with sleep. And we've touched on this with ergonomics and other things, haven't we? To say you've got to get the C-suite involved and on board, and then the whole thing will flow down. Whilst you haven't, there's always potentially going to be that sort of butting of heads to a degree, isn't there?
Yeah, but what
the best companies are the ones that are looking after the staff. They're the ones. They're the ones that are retaining the staff, and their productivity is better. I mean, if you say to a CEO of a company, you've got staff in your workforce that actually, if you can improve their sleep, you're going to get 4 times productivity out of them.
Yeah.
How much more money is that going to bring into your business? Well, hang on a minute. Maybe I should be doing something. But who gets to that person to say to them, there is a sleep epidemic, it's impacting your business because we're not doing something about it. Can we do some kind of research into how sleep is impacting your workforce and look to improve that and see what the cost implications would be for improving it? The benefits.
Yeah. Oh, the old C-suite.
Yeah.
Culture change piece. Yeah, no, and I think it's very difficult because I think until we see proper equity within organizations, and I don't think we get equity until we actually physically change the shape of C-suite. Right.
Elliot Ray's doing a lot with things like parenting out loud and stuff like that, trying to get people to actually be vocal about things. Yes, I am going to pick my children up, so people beneath can follow, rather than it being, as you just said before, the people at the top work. I've got to copy that same work ethic. I've got to work. If you see your boss or your boss's boss openly saying, I am going to go to my child's sports day, I am going to be there for this event. Well, hang on a minute. If they can I?
It sort of legitimizes it in people's minds, doesn't it? Then,
yeah, things like paternity.
If they can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah, if a man takes their 6 months paternity, if that's what they're allowed to get, if that company gives it. I know Spotify, they do 6 months paternity pay now, which is amazing. And there's a few that are starting to really push that. Actually, then it needs to be that these men take that. They use this because that then filters down. That's going to then hopefully help this whole equity, because this is where it starts now. Yes, there's not much we can do right at the top with the people in the 50s and whatever that are running the businesses. They're past all that. But actually, the people that are here now that are moving into that parenting sector, becoming parents, they're the people having the next generation. That's what we need to be fixing, because when our children then get to their age or going into employment, that's where we need things to be better, because we're not going to change things overnight. This is a long game, so actually this is where we go. All the people that are becoming parents now, this is where we filter it down and we make that be the point where we make equity more equal, sort it out a bit better.
I think it comes back down to the point, though, that there's a massive gulf between how we want to work these days and how we are working, right? And to quote someone that I've been doing some work with, Freddie Gilmore, he's in the middle of writing a book which is called "Is How We're Working." And actually, I think that's a great. I think that's a great question to ask, because I don't know, is it working how we're working at the moment? I think I think we're at a point now where we really do need to go kind of back to the drawing board, because what society needs, or what people need as work, that actually will work for everybody in an equitable way, bring more equality in and diversity in, etc., and enable people to work without fear that, if you have children, or if you prefer to work in the morning rather than the afternoon, it won't be held against you, and it won't stop you climbing up the ladder, as it were.
Get the job done.
We need, and it goes back to, what Nicola Pease has said on this program before now about proper flexible working. We need to have far more flexibility in the way that work, in the structures that work looks like, because at the moment it just still looks too much like it used to. And whilst it does, there's always going to be this rub, and I think it's a commercial rub, really, which is that, coming back to the point I made earlier on about, I don't ever see the issue of sleep being raised on a workplace assessment form.
It's not on the HR drop-down box for being sick either. What's the reason you're off sick? Had a bad night's sleep.
Well, and the reason it isn't, in the same way that quite often it isn't, the other things like nutrition are never looked at, for example, as well, and which again is a massive thing. What you're putting in your body should be looked at, is because we're trying to keep things on there that can be tick box, and that actually aren't going to cause too much upset, right? Because once you start, because it comes down to that kind of obligation and who's responsible piece, right? And I expect for a lot of businesses, they go, well, they're at home when they sleep, right? That bit's nothing to do with us, right? And so that's the culture change bit that has to happen, which is actually, when I employ this person, if you're really caring about their well-being, then you actually should be caring about their well-being all day, every day, not just when they're in your premises.
But then you've got the other side with this is, yes, okay, it's all right saying that, but how many people leave work worrying about work? So when they go to bed at night, they're worrying about how they're getting on with things. So it is filtering in, because again, a load of the research we did was on the sort of mental health and that workload and stuff like that, and the amount of people that were saying that their struggles from work were affecting their sleep. The workload was too high, what was expected of them was too much, and it's like, well, where's that communication? So yes, it's all filtering in right the way through, but it's okay saying that. So right, if you're in a job where you work 9 to 5, and when you shut your laptop down at 5 o'clock, that is it. You don't hear anything about anything till 9 o'clock the next morning. Maybe that's a bit different. But how many jobs really shut their laptop now at 5 o'clock and it goes off? Everybody is on all the time. You're about to go to bed. You've got an email that pings in. Oh, hang on, now I've got to do that tomorrow morning. And that stops you going to sleep, because now you're thinking, I've got to remember to do that. And what am I going to say with this? So
I think it's the most dangerous thing that you get over and over and over in business is, could you just?
Yes.
Right.
And you go,
I think I should start a t-shirt line that says, t-shirts that say, could you just? Because it really is. It's the most dangerous saying out there when people say that. And it's a complete disrespect of people's boundaries, because if you're asking, could you just, that you've overstepped that person's boundary already. You know it.
Yeah.
And if you're asked that question, you don't want to be seen to be the person that goes, no, I can't. No one wants to say
no,
that.
I can't. Why would you admit you can't do something?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, go on then. I'll just do it this once then.
Yeah.
Just that once. But actually, how long did that once take?
Yeah.
Someone needs to invent a piece of AI that looks for conversations on email or WhatsApp or whatever that start, could you just, and then reports them into HR and goes, this person is harassing. Then and then we could monitor it, and then we could actually all do something about it. I think this has been a brilliant conversation today, and actually really we could actually have continued this on forever. Stephen, I just wanted a quick one. Did you look into how much did you look into any of this when you were like developing the light, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more focused around energy or energy levels during the day, as in during your working day. But what Nicole Graham's referring to is we have a light that basically changes color throughout the day to tie in with your body's natural circadian rhythm to sort of help release chemicals and endorphins throughout the day. But I think the focus was around that working day and not maybe around the sleep specifically. It was more around daytime energy. But I think it's a really good, interesting thing for me to go away and find out a little bit more about. But yeah, it's color changes to help release chemicals and endorphins to sort of keep those energy levels up, and certainly give you a sort of a post-lunch boost as you're heading.
Well, actually keep the energy levels up, but also actually help you get tired towards the end of the day.
Well, I was just about to say that. So what you could possibly do is have one that is like a longer length of time, and about an hour to 2 hours before what would be bedtime, the light dims.
Yeah.
Because you want to get rid of the blue lights. No blue lights. The best colours are red which is why the colours on the alarm clocks are red, because that's the colour that least inhibits melatonin.
Absolutely.
So you want to be trying to get rid of the blue lights. But yeah, about melatonin only produces in dim light. So actually, you want it start to produce about 1 to 2 hours before you go to sleep.
Yeah.
So if you can literally kick that off by saying, right, bedtime is this time. This is when I go to bed. We kick the light off into like nice dim mode at this time. Help set your rhythm.
I'm going to ping you the details over when we chat, when we connect on LinkedIn. Nicole, it'll be interesting for you just to have a look at this product and read some of the, the little bits behind it. Might be something we can talk about and work on a little bit further on it.
Absolutely. So, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on. Very quickly before you go, right? We've got a couple of minutes. Very quickly before you go, 2 quick tips maybe for anybody that's out there today that's been listening and thinking, oh yeah, that is me. I'm like that at work all the time. Things that we can do that will help in terms of getting us better sleep. Okay.
So we're talking about, well, we all talk about the obvious, which is no screens before bed, but we don't live in a world where that's realistic. So try and look for your blue light filter on your phones and things like that. Or you can actually get glasses apparently that have a blue light filter in there. So try and avoid screens if you can. Tire the brain out a little bit in the run up to bedtime and lower that lighting. That's a really big one, lowering the lighting an hour or so before bed. But actually trying to go to bed at the same time every day and get up at the same time every day. And when you do get up, go outside. And it feels like it goes against everything because it's getting darker and it's not exactly pleasant. But if you're wanting to set your body clock to get up around the same time every day and go to bed at the same time, get out into the natural light or
lack of.
And that sort of the air on your skin, that sort of thing, it resets your body clock.
Wow.
Yeah, there we go.
Clever. It's so clever. And this is all free stuff, though. This is the thing. Sleep is free.
Yeah. But the best tips that we've covered on this show on all the different subjects, from sleep to all the different pieces, are generally something that's quite free and quite easy to do, but we just don't think about it. And because it's that easy, we sometimes neglect that thought, where they're just perfect things to think about, aren't they?
Yeah. What I will say is, if you change all your sleep hygiene over and you implement strategies that are going to be really good for your sleep, if your sleep quality isn't improving, if you're still really, really tired, that's when you need to seek medical help, because there are so many undiagnosed sleep disorders. And that's the issue. We've got people are just complaining about, I'm really tired. But if you change all your basic stuff and you're still tired, then there may be something else that's going on. Right. And as we are becoming a society that is more obese, and as we get older, we do start putting more weight on anyway, as women go through the menopause. All these things are triggers for other potential medical issues with sleep. So get it checked just to make sure that there isn't something else going on.
Yeah. And lastly, a really great piece of advice is get yourself a sausage dog.
Right. Okay.
Like one of these that I made earlier. because stroking one of these just before you go to bed will really relax you, and you'll feel much more tired, won't you?
The show's official pet.
Oh,
good old Trooper.
For anybody that was listening to this podcast, I held up a dog then that's very, very cute. Pictures of that are available.
And it was his own dog, by the way. It wasn't just a random
on my
dog
LinkedIn
walking
profile.
by on the street.
Yes, it wasn't just, I just didn't find
own
him
this dog
randomly. Yes. There you go. Thank you so much, Nicole, for coming on today.
Not a problem. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Brilliant.
Folks,
thank you.
Hope you're a bit more informed now about sleep patterns, and but let's have more conversation about sleep, especially within the sort of human factors arena. I'd love to hear from any of you professionals that are carrying out workplace assessments, etc. Do you ever talk with clients about sleep? Does it ever come up as part of workplace assessments? If not, is there an opportunity there to talk about sleep? Are we missing a trick, as it were? Perhaps sometimes we're only dealing with 3/4 of the problem if we haven't addressed everything that might be affecting somebody's health. Until next time, bye for all of us. And we're out.